Our EMA or airport.
So where would you like to start? Salary and wages?
Let's start at the top and just go down.
Okay.
Basically, his presentation is summarized on your spreadsheet that I did, so, I mean, we could look at either, they're pretty interchangeable, I mean. His presentation will have more detail. You have yours? It was very thorough, I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. I included the,
I read it all, made my notes. What you doing?
we were gonna do an annual report.
Look at you. I'm sorry, you
We had an annual report that we were gonna send to print for 2019, in 2020. And just with the COVID and the print shop, having some of their staff out, we just, by the time it came around, we just figured we combined 19 and 20. So we should have something the first of the year for basically breaking down what the department did over the last 2 years. Okay.
just want to walk through it.
Yeah, we can.
Um,
Yeah, so if you have any questions, so salary and wages, I had asked for an 8% increase. Part of that was the community paramedicine program that we put into place. We had taken on the additional staffing without any increase to the budget, so I absorbed that into our current budget. So I was gonna try to, for 2021, see if I could get those funds added to the salary and wages, which would in turn allow me to increase, the staffing back on the fire side. So either on EMS or fire, a combination of both. So I had a budget impact of $80,759 between salary and benefits. Is everybody familiar with the community paramedicine truck?
Yeah.
Kind of what it is, kind of a community outreach.
Right.
Okay. Any questions on the community paramedicine? I mean, it's been a good help.
Still working out well?
It is.
Very
yes.
busy.
Yeah.
Very busy.
I
So
bet.
they're actually able to take some of the load off of the 911 ambulances that, would respond for emergencies. They're able to actually respond to some of those calls, actually assist without having to have an ambulance out there. So it kind of gives them a break at one side, and it also, allows them to run some calls and get the experience for the community paramedicine truck. If they get there and it does need the attention of an ambulance, or they may need to transport, they'll just call for it at that point. So it's been really good. I think in 2021, once the vaccine's available and hospitals will reach out a little bit more, and primarily it's designed to keep readmittance into a hospital. So once a patient's released, they would give us a follow-up with the patient. We would actually send the truck out there a couple times a week just to check on people, make sure the meds are good, and if somebody gets readmitted to a hospital in 30 days, insurance doesn't cover it. So it's beneficial for the hospital to have us follow up with them. So that's kind of the basis behind the community paramedicine truck.
So you're really not talking about an 8% increase if this is covering, the new figure includes 80,000. The paramedic.
The community paramedicine? Yeah, part of it was covering the expense or the salaries of there's actually a nurse EMT and an EMT on that truck right now. So part of the increase is funding the community paramedicine truck. The other portion would be to deal with some compression among the firefighters and the EMS personnel. We have some people that have been there 10 or 15 years that make the same as somebody that started 2 months ago. So I would like to reward those employees for their years of service and basically try to reduce the compression. And I would do that by maybe doing like a 0.5% per year with a cap of maybe, 5%. So if somebody had 10 years on, they could get a 5% raise. Somebody had 3 years, it'd be, 1.5%. So.
But that then contributes to people on the low end of the scale, and we're still having trouble keeping them because they are on the low end. You only give smaller increases, right?
The less time you have, the less your increase will be. So what we're trying to do is retain our employees that have been here for an extended period of time. And it's also, they've stuck with us for a number of years without any increases in their hourly rate.
So if you don't mind, can I give an example?
Yeah.
We have an employee that's been working for us for 10 years that makes, we'll just throw out an arbitrary number, $13.50 an hour. If that employee is making $13.50 an hour and he's been with us for 10 years, that's our starting pay for a brand new employee. They're making the same, and there's no differentiation between a senior member of 10 years service and a brand new employee that comes and gets hired on tomorrow. So that compression is where we're really having an impact, in that we're not getting that salary differential between folks who have been here for 10 years and have, put the blood, sweat, and tears into the work. And this would help with that compression.
Let me ask a hypothetical question.
Yes, sir.
I have no bias.
Oh, please.
Is it, whether it be fire or whatever, some professions, when you've been there 10 years, you're good. If someone that's been there 5 years, it's just as good. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
At some point,
Sure.
longevity doesn't really increase
The network.
effectiveness of the unit.
Sure. I can understand that.
So I'm just trying to get my arms around.
But we haven't had any type, there had not been any type of benefit for that 10-year person or 5-year person. There's nothing, there's no incentive there for that, period. It's the same across the board. So if we had something in place that would incentivize people, like for the military, for instance, we would get our pay steps every 2 years. You would get a pay increase based on your pay grade. Once you reached a certain amount of years, if you were 10 years in service as an E5, you wouldn't get any more pay raises because there was no more incentive. Because you're going to stay in E5, and you can stay in E5 for 20 years and retire, but you're not going to get any more money. The incentive is for you to move up. Once you move up, then that time period starts over again, and you can start collecting more money every 2 years.
And then we did increase the paramedics. Are you guys competitive now in your starting?
As far as starting salary, we're pretty much there. For our paramedic side of the house, yes, we're very competitive. We're not having a retention issue on the paramedic side.
Not necessarily.
I don't
We're
think
doing
that's an
pretty well with retaining who we have.
I also think that the county has a responsibility. The county's growing. So if you don't do what you can to keep the firemen and the paramedics, the good ones that have been there for multiple years and have given back to the county without any kind of raises, a slap in the face that somebody comes in and gets paid more than them, you're going to lose people. And given with COVID and it going nowhere, on top of the county growing, if you don't pay them and keep their salaries competitive, they're going to go elsewhere. And then you're going to have a shortage of firemen and EMTs and stuff, and then what happens?
And those are trained guys.
Yeah, these are people with experience that when the calls come down, they know the area, they know where they're going. The risk you take when you bring somebody new on, they're unfamiliar with the area, they could get lost, delayed response times, things of that nature.
It's a philosophical question.
I get your
What do
point.
you think about it?
I get your point with that. But I understand.
And our guys have done really well through this whole COVID. We've had a couple positive cases, but there's over 800 cases in Gilmer County, and
Were those cases contracted, I don't know if you could say that, on duty?
There's no
We
way to
can't really
quantify
trace
where
it.
it was contracted from, but I can say with absolute pride and every positive emotion possible that with Dan and the rest of the leadership of the department, we have had 2 confirmed cases in our department since COVID started.
We
And
transported 100 patients maybe.
at least half of the patients that probably pop positive in the
Yeah.
county were transported. So that's impressive. That speaks volumes to the professionalism of those folks and the safety.
So any other questions on salary wages?
Volunteer fire wages, I noticed
Yes,
it's
sir.
on your list, but zero on
Yeah,
your list.
if you look down to contract services volunteer at 15,000,
What is that?
that's where they pay that line item out of.
Well, actually,
They did last year.
There's a per,
absolutely.
every time a volunteer fireman responds to a fire or something, they get a set fee for that.
We have a couple gentlemen that go around, they'll check trucks off at the volunteer stations. They'll actually keep a couple trucks in service for a period of time, so there is some compensation that goes out. We have the volunteer coordinator, the district chief, which is Russ Hook. He receives a small stipend every month as well. I know in 19, they started taxing what the volunteers were getting for their pay. Prior to that, it was not. So I just asked for a small increase in there. I'd like to offset what that tax was for them. That would kind of get them back to where they were.
Is that every volunteer gets paid?
If they're,
They respond to calls, yes.
if they're up to date with their certifications.
Okay, so
and,
you have a current list of all the volunteers because there was a bazillion volunteers that were not
Yeah,
volunteers.
it's a smaller.
They only get
number.
paid by call. They have to respond to get paid.
But, you know, it's been kind of an odd year with the COVID, so, I mean, there hasn't been as much of the training and stuff like that, for, that they would actually get compensation from. But I think looking towards 2021, if they kind of get a handle on it, there's possibly a vaccine that, you know, the full function of the volunteer will kind of come back to life for 2021.
Would it be accurate to say that the type of training that y'all do does not lend itself real well to virtual training?
There's a combination of both. We try to apply some of the virtual training that we'll do online and then apply it in the field. So they'll go over, you know, certain rescue techniques, and then they'll go out to the burn building, they'll smoke it up, and then they'll go inside and, you know, try to apply some of those skills. Same with like pumping a truck. You know, they'll have a classroom or a virtual classroom setting for that, and then they'll have to display or exhibit those skills outside in the field. Going through volunteer fire wages, health insurance. Most of that's that's mandatory stuff. That's stuff that's gonna correlate between the salary and wages on a percentage. And I think that the health insurance up 10% is something that you had predicted in your worksheet. So that was the outlook, going up 10% on that.
What sort of dues and fees are causing a 20-34% jump?
Okay. So dues and fees.
You moved some.
I moved some money for that. We actually, it's a recertification year for EMTs and paramedics. So they're gonna have to, we pay for their certification, for their EMT and paramedic license. So they have to reapply every 2 years to the state of Georgia to get their license renewed. So the department has in the past paid for their renewal fees. On top of that, we have the International Association of Fire Chiefs. So I'd like to add the battalion chiefs this year into that. Georgia Association of Fire Chiefs. We have an inspectors, we have 2 inspectors, that's $60 a person, that's the 120. The law enforcement is for the arson investigation. That would be for Mark Chastain and Jeff Statham, who did the investigations. Licensure for our ambulances. Previously wasn't taken out of dues and fees. I think that came out of just the,
Contract services.
yeah, either contract services, on that one, or general supplies, but I think contract services, it came out of that. So basically, I was just trying to keep stuff in where it actually should come out of. So I made the adjustment there.
Okay, but we're taking out of contract services and
Yes.
moving it to dues and fees.
Yes, sir, and
But contract services.
I reduced
is
that
not
by 14,500 to put over into dues and fees. So it went from $104,500 in contract services down to 90.
Sounds still
We're
showing
showing-
104.
I may have pulled that number over.
Yours is still showing 104.
Incorrect, yeah, so that should be 90,000 instead of 104,000?
Yes.
Okay, so that ain't.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm sure enough. I guess there you go. I must have looked at that, I was trying to pull those numbers from his presentation, and I must have just looked at it wrong.
I think I pulled, actually I had 2 of these, I think I pulled the wrong one. I had 2 in the truck, but, so
Dan,
my
did
other
you-
one, but yeah, 90,000 on that.
Okay.
Dan, is there, so if the county's going to pay for the recertification or help or whatever, what does the county get back? Is there like something, like a contract or something to say that if the county does this and you get the certification, you have to work for Gilmer County, be a good employee, blah, 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 for a certain period of time?
If we were to pay for them to go to EMT school or paramedic school or to like fire academy or firefighter 1, this is strictly a license renewal. So we don't have any restrictions on that. And that's usually just our full-time employees that work for us for the renewal. We have part-time employees, and usually their employers will pay for, their primary employer usually funds them. So we're only doing our full-time employees that work for us, and not part-time.
I don't like the way you're thinking.
Yeah, we do make people commit to,
Well, it's
basically
an
like a
investment,
contract.
we're
Yes.
investing in county money, then we
Yeah,
should get something.
it's
back.
not our desire to educate people, get them certifications, and then they take that elsewhere. So we try to keep an eye on that and, have something in place to protect us for that.
And I know in other positions, you sometimes have to pay back a certain amount if you don't.
If they left,
stay.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
right.
See,
We would make sure they had a bill and follow up on it, so.
For 6 budgets now, I've been trying to find out what a fire station annual allowance is.
Okay, I'll tell you what I have used that for is for this year, washer, dryer, dishwasher. We have the bed bug issue, so we're swapping to the metal frame beds. So they can actually put a tote underneath, but the bed bugs tend to migrate towards wood, attached to it, and box springs as well. So we're gonna get these bed frames, get rid of the box springs, and get the mattresses in a zipper case. So that's some of the stuff that we, incidentals that they need on.
Could we make it more descriptive, or I'd like miscellaneous, better than what paying of allowance, that's really good.
Yeah.
It may sound like you're paying for employees that work at that fire station for annual allowance. I agree with the
It's
Yeah,
description.
I
not
don't
like
have-
we're just giving every fire station $15,000 a
Right.
year and saying, here you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, would fire station miscellaneous work for you?
That would work fine, yeah.
Insurance and bond, what is that?
That would be
That is-
Sandy.
that is property and liability insurance. That's the fire department's portion of property and liability insurance on the buildings and the vehicles and all that.
And the last item I have, other contributions, what in the world is that?
So I think other contributions, we have at each of the waste management sites, we actually have like a canned drive set up to where that's actually collected like on a weekly basis. It's turned in. I know some of the funds go to something like
I think I'm pulling up the details right here. I
Okay.
think that's like a one-time specific.
Is it?
It is, but I can't remember.
Right,
the
like I
name.
got 2 checks now from Pre Recycling for $104 and something else, so. Gary Watkins picks up the cans and gets a check, and we Blue Jean deposits into one of the accounts.
What is
That'll
that
be
expense?
revenue, though.
That goes on the revenue side.
Okay.
That does. Hold on just 1 second. My VPN's a little slow.
So the other contributions really should be in revenue and not in expenditures, huh?
No, the other contributions is an actual expenditure that is made. What he's
Oh,
talking
so the
about
check
on
he's
the,
talking about.
Yeah, I've used other contributions
Those are on the
for
revenue side.
purchase of like the iPads for the ambulances and for the community paramedicine truck. So sometimes something that may not fit or may not have room in a different line item for that, I've taken and used the other contributions.
Well, the word contribution, if you're a government entity, to me, that's just, it's a red flag. The
Right.
taxpayer says, who are you contributing?
And I'm comfortable with changing the wording on that.
Please.
What if we were to just move that amount into the fire station miscellaneous?
That's fine.
You get $35,000 from miscellaneous.
the other contributions expenditure line is for that Georgia Forestry Commission. We pay a lump sum to them one time a year.
Okay.
For, you may have to,
They charge us so much an acre, I think.
right,
to-
per acre. That's what's in that other contributions line.
Let's call it maybe Georgia Forestry, or Georgia Forestry.
Well, it's not only that. There's a couple of other smaller things that come out of that, but that's the biggest part of it. That's about $18,000 of it.
Okay.
Why don't we show that separate and put the rest of it in miscellaneous?
Okay,
Okay.
that's fine. I'm good with that. Gasoline and diesel fuel, just to make a comment on that. I know we've been under budget in 19 and 20 with fuel. I would like to stay the same, not knowing what's gonna happen with the election and zero emissions, you know, who knows how this whole thing could go, and fuel's a lot of speculation and fear, and, I know we may still have some time after the election to adjust that, but depending on how that goes, I mean, we may pay more in fuel than what's on here.
It's not likely that we will have a final budget. This will all be finalized before the election.
Right.
Anyway, so
Okay.
we can keep that in mind.
Right. You want to look, any other questions, like travel and expenses, I left that the same. Education and training was the same. Clothing and uniforms is just a small increase there of $1,100. We've done pretty well with getting our guys outfitted, getting them looking professional over the last 2 years. And we appreciate you guys, your contribution there and helping us make this happen. So I think we can stay within that. We're actually, part of that is going to try to start getting our lieutenants, maybe 3 this year, their Class A uniform for when they go to special events, so they can have their dress uniform. So that's part of the increase on that.
Yeah, I'm curious, actually, just kind of off topic, but not.
Yes.
So the fuel was actually not needed, but were you driving more to go to, with COVID, and I'm curious also, were there fewer fire calls with people staying home, or
Yes,
or more?
we actually had,
Yeah,
the
I
billing
know.
company pulled the stats for us, and we did have quite a reduction March and April. After COVID hit, people were staying home, so our EMS runs were down significantly for those months. We're back in prime season of, every other tag, it's Alabama, Carolina, Florida, around here, so we're picked back up as far as calls
Gotcha.
go.
Right.
But, yeah, we did have a decline for a period of time with the COVID. So, fire calls, I wouldn't necessarily say those went down, but EMS calls did.
One question, your fundraiser, Boot the Burn, I believe it is. What does that stand for?
What's that, the? Can
You
you
said
repeat
boots
that?
to burn?
Boot the Burn, we collect money in the boot.
Okay, we do that for Christmas for the kids. We do a boot drive. Usually they do July.
July,
and then
October, November.
October, and then they'll do like Black Friday. We're still discussing how we're gonna do that.
There-
Yeah. I think last year we raised over $10,000.
It was 14,000 last year.
Was it 14? Okay.
And all that money goes straight towards the children of the community we purchase, it's all done by the firefighters, and it's for the children of the community. We work with the school district, the schools, and we bring those to the schools. Last year was a huge hit. We were able to bring Christmas gifts to each one of the elementary schools for
And
kids.
it's not just gifts either, they're bringing clothing that the school
Right.
nurse asks for, socks, underwear, stuff like that, that they need.
The reason I asked the question when I visited you all down there, was my understanding, Al said this was a pot where y'all had your Christmas party.
No, not for the boot drive, no, sir.
No,
Yes.
the
That's the
auxiliary.
firefighters auxiliary.
Auxiliary.
Yes,
The
the auxiliary.
Gilmer
pays
Firefighters
for-
Auxiliary, and that's a firefighters auxiliary in Gilmer. That's a combination between the two fire departments in the county, which is Gilmer County and the city of LJ.
That's the only reason I raised it.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
the
that's
auxiliary is a
completely separate.
501c3.
Right.
Non-for-profit, so when we take the money, we go to Walmart, we make the purchases, we're able to do it tax-free. No taxpayer funds are used towards toys for kids. I mean, that's all generated funds by our staff from the public.
I believe there's a separate board for that is
Yes.
non-governmental.
That's correct, yes, sir.
So they meet, I think, once a month, and, they vote on stuff. Amicalola gets a check once a year as a contribution to the auxiliary as well. So
They
that's-
don't meet
that's
at any of our
usually-
locations, they meet off-site
Yeah.
to be able to make it where there's no impropriety or anything like that.
And so have you made a decision as far as the boot drive? Because obviously you
Yeah.
lost July.
Yeah.
Yes,
But there
we
is,
spoke.
if not a bigger need this year, then.
Yeah, so it's a topic of conversation. We would like to move forward with it. We were gonna talk to the board first, because you guys may get the call if they see firefighters up at the four-way stop at, Walmart. So we'd like to proceed forward with it, but we would be out in public with a mask on.
Mine's about to still do theirs.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
We're in the proper personal protective equipment. We believe that we'll be safe out there, not only for ourselves, but for the public. in
if
doing
somebody
this.
rolls their window down, I mean, they feel comfortable for us approaching the vehicle, I would assume.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Yeah.
gotta be, because there's such a need, and the schools have been already reaching out. There's-
Based on the way traffic's been, y'all need to be out there this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The rest of this month, not this weekend,
But,
the next,
yeah.
well, yeah.
And then you always have the one or two that may call Commissioner Paris and, fire departments out there in the middle of COVID, but, yeah.
Such
I
an
would
awesome experience.
Say rest
Like,
assured they would have a
literally
mask
go to the store,
on.
get the gifts, and go to that school, the kids see out the
Oh,
window.
yeah, I've been
The
part of-
staff cry,
part of it, yeah.
and the firemen have a blast, because it's just an awesome experience.
And it's gonna be different this year. I mean, we may end up just dropping them off and the school has to take care of it, but, we would still like to do it. We may not reach 14,000 this year, I don't
But
know, it may
any
have
little
more.
bit
May get more.
You may,
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know.
true.
But if the board is comfortable with us proceeding, I'll pass the information on, and, you know, they may be out there this weekend.
Did y'all participate in the shopping with the kids last year too?
Shopping
Yes,
with the Hero,
Shopping
yeah,
with
as
the
well.
Hero.
Edward said that was just,
It was fantastic, and that's,
And I think that's still a go.
it is. They
For
had a
now.
meeting earlier this week, and that's thanks to Ray Grace over there at the LJPD. He's really kind of spearheading that. He doesn't want credit for it, but I'll give it to him, because he's spearheading that.
That was another very emotional, because you had the parents with you.
well, Edward was very touched by
Oh,
all of it.
wonderful. It was a great year last year.
Yeah.
Any other questions? There was an increase in advertisement. As far as public outreach, public education, fire prevention, trying to produce an annual report as well. That was where some of that increase came from.
Are you going ahead with the Firewise program?
It's,
I can
as of right now, it's virtual.
Okay.
They're doing it all online through forestry. So Firewise is, it's called Firewise Community. And it's basically making a community safe from forest fires, kind of like what they're experiencing in California. So basically they come in, evaluate a community, such as, I think Walnut Mountain is the only one in the county that's considered Firewise.
River's Edge is.
Oh, River's Edge as well?
Yeah.
So Kusawati needs to,
Yeah, they were moving
That would be a
forward.
big
We were.
I'm hoping.
That would be
We've been
huge.
very involved, and then
Yeah.
once COVID impacted, it's not even us not wanting it, it's them not being able to, the forestry not being able to come out and do it. So everyone's really limited on what they can do. So we've been participating with that program on a weekly basis and monthly basis with their virtual. But to come out and do the inspection, I guess you call it, or review of the community, they're not able to do that right now.
Let's get through this.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Let's
that's-
get into
We just need to,
2021.
yeah, we need to.
And the travel and expense doubled.
Well, what we did is, it was 10,000 last year. We moved 5,000 out of it since most every class or conference was canceled. And with that money, we purchased an outdoor building to cover some of our spare vehicles, because they were out in the weather, being exposed to the elements. And so we took, I think it's like $4,500 or something, purchased a 20 by 30 metal building, and it's over at our headquarters. So now we're able to keep our vehicles under cover instead of out in the open. So that line item is still, it was 10,000 in 2020 originally. It was just 5,000 was moved out of there to general supplies and materials.
I'm sure capital page. Yeah.
Utilities was a little more last year, but it was fairly cold. I know we went through a lot of propane at a lot of the volunteer stations, community centers, election polling stations that we use, so. Seemed like every time I turned around, I was doing a propane order in the winter. It was fairly cool. I don't think there was anything else you'd have a question on as far as an increase.
Yeah, we're going to take
What I was
capital.
looking at.
Okay, capital. So, the battery operated extrication equipment, we're just trying to update our current fleet of gas powered hydraulic with the hydraulics, which is actually, it's a brand name for hers, but it's a battery operated extrication equipment. So there's spreaders, which you know that's the jaws of life. So spreaders, cutters, and then there's rams that you can actually push up dash, kind of separate things. So I got 34,000 in there. That's for the whole setup, extra batteries. These are instantly ready for use when a call comes down. We arrive on scene, they come off the truck, and they're ready to use. You don't have to carry a generator over, hook up hoses. So you have instant access to this. It's going to start every time. It's battery operated. They do have 110-volt backup if something was to happen that you can plug it in. So we're just asking for a second set, and we'll do one per year until we get 4. It's going to be our request. They do have the option for a lease purchase, which I don't know how anybody feels about that, but I'll bring it up. You can lock in the price, and they would give us 3 sets. You just make 3 payments of, whatever the price ends up being, 33 and change. And it locks you in at that price instead of the 5% increase over the next 2 years. So that's our options there. 1 3/4 nozzles. So that's just to update. Our current nozzles haven't been replaced in a while, so we would like to get some on our frontline apparatus. Then we'll transition the other nozzles down to some of the lesser run stations, the volunteer stations. And then we could eventually just get some of the antiquated nozzles totally off the trucks. So on your sheet, do you have dive operations on there or special operations? I think I picked up the wrong sheet here.
So we've got,
And the other's bunker gear on there.
$7,500.
Yeah, 7,500 for special operations.
It's a part of that figure,
on
2,000.
capital, special operations, 7,500.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did we talk about the replacement fire hose for 10,000? Did we talk about that?
No.
That's what I had on my list,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, the 10,000 is to replace some 1 3/4 hose and some 2.5-inch hose on the fire engines, the front lines. So we did make a purchase last year of 1 3/4 hose. We got all the frontline apparatus with new hose, which would be the 4 career stations. We just don't have spare hose to where when they come back, they can wash that hose, take the hose off the rack, and place it on the truck. So we just don't have enough hose to do that yet. So what we're doing is a little bit each year. We'll try to fund some where we can actually. Okay. And we're also going to pursue a grant this year, the fireworks grant. We got that in 2019. It's in every other year you can apply for it, so it's usually around $5,000. We'll probably use some of that to either offset nozzles or hose or a combination of both.
I don't have any more questions on this one.
And the bunker gear, that's an important issue. In 2019, we did a bulk purchase of some gear because, if you remember, the gear was out of date and people were operating in gear that was unsafe. So we did a purchase of bunker gear. And in order to not have to, 8 or 10 years down the road, make that huge purchase again, if we can replace this, 5 to 6 sets every year, that will cycle us through 50 to 60 sets over 10 years, which keeps everybody. I'd much rather do that than to come asking for a big chunk of money. And I think it's the responsible thing to fund it a little bit at a time instead of, coming to you and saying, everybody needs new gear. And it's easier to do budget-wise, I think.
What is the life of one of those sets of gear?
The max is 10 years.
10 years?
Yes.
And
That's
how
if
many
it's
total?
treated well and
Not burnt, not. not damaged gear. And they go into this gear, they go into these buildings, and they do get burnt. That gear does get damaged lots of times. That gear would have to be replaced because it's deemed not safe to continue to use in the next fire. So we do have to.
Here's the situation that I want to avoid though. We made a one-time purchase before,
Yes, sir.
big purchase.
Yes.
Now, I understand the idea of rotating so that we don't have to do that again.
Yes, sir.
What I'm thinking though is if we just bought all brand new, and now we start the rotation, are we gonna be replacing gear that hasn't really served, initially at least, we're gonna be replacing gear that has not actually given its
Well, we've also, since 2019, we've also hired new employees that are using older gear. Some of the gear
I can see that.
is at its life expectancy that's gonna need to be replaced now
I
for
can
the
see
new
that. I
hires.
just didn't want to put in place a rotation and try to replace gear that was only a couple years old.
Oh, that's not our intention at all.
So normally what would happen is, if, say we get the 5 sets of gear, the personnel that don't have necessarily good fitting gear, we would probably fit them in gear. It's important that it fits well. Everybody gets measured for gear. If it's too tight, you can get burns in your creases of your arms, your back. So the gear has to fit appropriately when you're in a fire. We would rotate that gear. So if somebody gets new gear, that gear goes into our inventory. When we hire somebody on, we take out of that inventory and we fit them into existing gear. So what it does is it allows us to create a little bit of a small inventory, not very much at all, but a small inventory that we can fit somebody. But when you come on the job, you should be able to be fitted for a uniform. We should be able to get you a uniform, pants, shirts, collar brass, everything that you need, your bunker gear. And you shouldn't have to wait for it. You shouldn't have to bring your gear from your full-time department when you come, part-time. So most of the time, our part-time guys get fitted with some of the spare gear that we have. And this helps with that rotation process.
Okay, the current year budget, you gonna finish within the budget current year?
I think in 19, we were over in some areas, but I think overall, we were right under where we needed to be. Same
I think you're asking about 20 though, aren't you?
20s budget. I mean, we're still a few months out, but I think percentage-wise, I don't have September's numbers yet.
Not here.
The reason I'm concerned is, and I don't know the time that is, there's a substantial overage in the 19.
Commissioner, if you don't mind, I can explain that overage in 19. And that overage was, that was right when I had taken over and we brought that on board. We had a major shortage in our paramedics. So much so that we had people working overtime that was absolutely astronomical, just to be able to sustain the required ambulances that we have to have. So we're not in that one.
I wasn't here all that time, so
Sure.
I apologize. I
And
would
we had
hope-
some capital expenses. We had a ladder truck that had to be,
It's not capital.
okay.
I would assume if the same situation happened, you would come to the commissioners and say, we got a real problem, let's amend the budget.
Yes, sir.
Otherwise, if everybody else ran over, we'd come to this.
And
Right.
that's what they did.
We did.
They did that, and we went through the routine of it, and I think the problem with what happened was, we failed to note the amended budget, but they did come to the commissioners, and that was the 19 increase that I was talking about a while ago. I thought it was reflected on there, but it's not. That's where it came from.
When it comes to that, we're very open, transparent, make sure that you all are aware because
And that could have been an issue, that could have been something that I
felt like it was
maybe
also
didn't get
bringing the department
recorded in
up to
CSI or
speed. That was
something.
Yeah, but all the towns say you can do that with the care. I'm not arguing the expense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
but it was back maybe before you
All
came
right,
on.
so for August of 2020, at the end of the month, we were at
At September-
65% of the budget.
At September 30th, you were at, y'all are at 73%, and you could be at 75, so
Okay,
at
so
the
we're
end of
2%
September,
under
you're 2%
budget.
under.
So we've been working hard to stay within,
I'm
you know,
sure.
what we're allotted. Even though COVID's kind of been trying and, you know, it's added some expenses to the department. But we're
There
striving
was-
to come in under budget. There is,
There was a major upheaval
I'm
in the
aware.
fire department.
I'm aware.
we got a good group of guys out there. I think we have a very good core group of senior staff, battalion chiefs and lieutenants in place now.
Which
So
does
I
not-
think we're moving in a really good direction. We have been and we continue to, you know, improve.
Which does not say that we shouldn't have reflected the budget and all that stuff. I mean, I'm not offering that as an excuse.
And I know really well the job he has done. So, I'm not particular anybody, I'm a numbers person,
Yes,
so.
and that's why we're here
Where I'm
today.
coming from. I think the chairman's done a great job. He continues to do a great
Yes.
job.
I would absolutely agree. I think you've all done a great job. We certainly appreciate the support.
If we didn't, if we went through this last year without them, how much harder your job would have been.
The safety of the county needs to be number one priority.
Sure. And that's where we have it. That's our number one priority.
And our capital budget, you know, is way down from last year, thanks to the CARES funding, and you get the board being generous to the fire department. And
I guess.
so we did take delivery of our ambulance, so we just have not had it. It'll be lettered on the 29th of October. And the stretcher should be in shortly, you know, thereafter. And so hopefully we can have it up and running by mid-November, I would say.
It's a beautiful truck. Thank
It's
you very
very
much.
nice.
Thank you.
So it was a good find. Director Casera was involved in finding the ambulance, so it was a very good price for the truck that we got.
And a very good color, best I remember.
Very nice.
Very nice.
Very good.
I don't know you, but I don't remember you. I remember you blew it off.
Oh, that's a good one to end on, right?
That's, you know, I just put that together as the color of the ambulance.
Y'all ready for the EMA portion?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll get you the sizes on those t-shirts.
Okay, yes. And Commissioner, I'll check on, I sent an email this morning.
Yeah, just let me know how much and I'll get you a check.
So. Okay.
Same.
Okay.
Food drive to go? Food drive?
Food drive is good, yeah. So I'll get with the guys, and if they want to proceed this weekend,